I have a specific question, right? Because as we said, like Tartaria had all of those mixtures of people from Moscow, I guess Moscovia or even before that, but all the way to California, and they had all this diversity of people living there, right? And what kind of problems did they have back then? Did they have like racism? Did they have like the problems that we're facing right now, or they have managed to solve them all?
So I think that at the time you had different problems, right? I think they had problems, natural and environmental problems. I think that a big reason that we have classism is because of scarcity economy, which occurred after a certain fact. There wasn't originally scarcity, there was abundance. Clearly, we see this in Native Americans, we see this in Asia, we see this in Africa. And what happens is a certain point when there's an overaccumulation of wealth in the hands of a few, or there's an abundance of persons, then there's less wealth to go around. So scarcity causes class, where they're like, well, this person's more prioritized than another person. And so once classism happens, you're like, well, these people are new. So their whole people are lesser class. So racism comes. I don't think that Tartaria had that. I think originally what Tartaria had was, whoa, these people have gunpowder. Like, whoa, these people have salt water that's been purified into water, and we live in the desert, or vice versa. Like, we have trade. This person has a boat with with a whole bunch of space on his boat. I have a bunch of stuff, and so you have a caste system that's developing not over essentiality of or not over priority, but over essentiality. Like each one of them needs each other for the system to exist. So there's a Scythian that's spending all their time working in the fields, and there's the Aryan Tartarian that's bringing the boat back and forth, and then they're meeting with two different groups of people that are growing on one continent or another continent, and they have an endless summer. And then the people that have winters, they experience it different. So you have the same thing you have in America. It's like, or probably in Russia, it's like, oh, those people are from Moscow. The Moscovians, they're all the same. They're and then you have everyone else. They're like, oh, those people don't get what it's like to be in the country. Like if you're out in like Odessa or something weird, like you're in Kiev. It's kind of got this nice city vibe, but what if you go to the Crimean coast and it's like Ukraine? Like, you don't know what it's like in the Ukraine. Like, so everyone's thinking it's like so different. Kazakhstan's so different than Northeast, like in Siberia, Novosibirsk, is different than Kazakhstan. So it's nothing to do with race at that point, not really. Absolutely. Like, but with the United States, what you have is a continual change from or assimilation of what happened in Tartary. Because at one point in Tartary, the problems they had were probably a volcano went off. And so we have these constant reminders of natural disaster and war. And war is like, well, what if someone takes our stuff? So we need to protect our stuff, and we can protect it from other people. I don't think Tartarians did that. I don't think society was built by the Tartarians for war. It was for trade. So trade allowed them to accumulate more society, and so they valued that more. And so their problems were probably that a volcano destroyed their major centers. And there's probably several volcanoes that went off. It's actually looking like some of the research we have shows that they were using those volcanoes for power, for mineral extraction, and that they might have even caused some of these explosions that were.
It's interesting. I just have this idea in my mind, just popped up. So it feels like the collapse of that country, like the territory, became with those natural disasters, right? And not rather like classes and collusion, other stuff like racism or like war. It was just happened naturally, let's say. So I have a question. Can we draw this parallel that what's coming? I mean, the climate change that would destroy like a big portion of the world, and that would like bring people together, or like, I don't know how to put it, but I guess you know what I'm.
And totally. No, I mean, like, that's the idea, is that you have a super volcano in Russia, you have a super volcano under Yellowstone, you have super volcanoes everywhere. Volcanoes go off if you check your day, 100 times a day, 30 to 100 times a day. 80-90% of the volcanoes are underwater, 70 or 80% of the earth is underwater. So when you start looking at it, volcanoes go off all the time, they build and they level. Society will eventually be destroyed by a volcano, not by an asteroid. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So volcanoes are an inevitability, but at the same time, we learn how to deal with it. So, I mean, I'm not particularly worried, because when it happens, it's gonna like be so big, like a super volcano that has a super flume that has a super critical eruption is very, these are all specific terms. Like a super eruption is not the same as super critical eruption. A larger eruption that actually like takes out the entire North American continent would cause the entire planet to be covered in sulfuric gas that would gas everyone and they would die in a few weeks. So it's like, don't worry about volcanoes, because if it happens, it happens and you are just done. But at the same time, small volcanoes happen. When I was in Argentina and Chile, I'd see 13, 14 volcanoes go off, within like a couple months. And I was like constantly out running them or driving, trying to get away from a volcano. It was like, this is ridiculous. So imagine that on a bigger scale. Like if people understood that volcanoes actually affect lives like that, then they'd probably realize. But we've done a lot. Society's done a lot to actually prevent this, to divert energy from volcanoes. People don't realize how much, But yeah, I think volcanoes will probably be the issue more than it'll be like COVID. I think that, at the end of the day, though, classism comes from scarcity. And there's certain kinds of scarcity. There's even scarcity just like, okay, we have plenty of corn in the United States, but it's all genetically modified and might screw you up. And it's, it's in one place. If we have diverse kinds of people that eat diverse kinds of food that are different in different places, then if one of them dies off, the other ones live. It's simple, cold-hearted science. And so there's a reason why they're closing the borders on you, and then they're trying to make people speak on their own internets and their own echo chambers, because legitimately it's safer. Like if you have everyone that's the same and there's one super killer, then there's no.
That's right. I think, like, personally.
Wait, wouldn't you say though that like the intermixing of people causes some genetic diversity and also just like cultural diversity, which allows people to think and move differently? How would you respond to that?
Well, okay. So, all right. First off, I want to say yes, but before I do, I have to devil's advocate myself and say not every person I've ever seen who's mixed race is a super genius athlete who, you know what I mean? So let's point that out. It doesn't necessarily mean this works, but where did the Nazis go after they were done with their eugenics programs? Brazil. What was Brazil like? What is Brazil like now? It's the ultimate melting pot. It's like every weird thing from everywhere in the world together has been mixed together. You have black, white, and then, of course, everything in between. Japanese have 2 million people. You have Chinese people. You have, different kinds of people from all the Indians and the hundreds of different kinds of people. So the genetics in Brazil are incredible, incredibly diverse. Are they good at sports? Yes. Are Brazilians smart? Often. So is there any reason to say that mixing would make you retarded and like a mule is like a horse and a donkey? Like, no. So like I would say that the real truth of it is that you look at corn, because you take corn and the way they breed corn is they take bags and put it over the stalks of each corn, and then it inbreeds. It pollinates itself, and then they do that for 7 generations. And after 7 generations, you have this tiny, weak, inbred, like white corn, and you have one from one plant, and you have another that's been 7 years grown its own way in another place. And then they mix those inbred corns together like a royal family, and you get the biggest corn you've ever seen, because it's all of the genetic fixes to all the problems. So I think that there's a multi-level plan in social engineering to inbreed genes in certain places and then to mix them in other places. And we're clearly mixing more in cities, and now in the country it's been like there's certain places where people are developing certain ways and they're staying the same way. So I mean, at the end of the day, you need it all. Trying to have one solution to the whole thing is ridiculous. Like, what are you going to tell everyone they have to all breathe the same way?